let's get to the crux of the matter that I mentioned in the very beginning. At least as far as South Carolina is concerned, they get things right. Why did men fight? And that really is very, very important. There were those like James Williams, who's the quote I gave you earlier, about for necessity to protect his birthright and that of his children. I mean, it's almost a paraphrase of the Declaration of Independence. It really, every time I read that and then think that this man died at Kings Mountain, kind of gives me goosebumps. He was fighting for an ideal. Gabriel, the son who signs up for the Continental Army, is doing exactly the same thing. His father, who is representative of many, not just in South Carolina, but throughout the colonies, initially didn't take a stand. But when pushed, they took a stand, and they took a very strong one. Now, in looking at the movie, I think critics have missed the forest for the trees. They've nitpicked, either missing things or because Hollywood made some bad choices. In addition to why men fought, the depiction of the brutality of the nature of warfare in South Carolina is not overstated. If anything, it is understated. And I'll just mention two scenes. One, when Gabriel's younger brother tries to free him and is shot in the back by the Tarleton character. I was asked by a reporter to comment that was specifically cited as an example of how no English officer would ever have behaved that way. And I had to go back to a 13-year-old South Carolinian by the name of Andrew Jackson, who was fighting first with Thomas Sumter, and he and his brother, Robert, 14, were captured. They were regulars, I mean, in terms of fighting. They were not drummer boys or couriers. Backcountry boys grew up pretty quickly in South Carolina. They were captured, and Jackson was asked by an officer to polish his boots. And this scrawny little 13-year-old, he was really scrawny, more or less stood at attention and said, "Sir, I am a prisoner of war and demand that you treat me as such." Now, to an officer in the British Army, this was just complete impertinence and insubordination. The officer pulled his cavalry saber, took a whack at Jackson. Jackson threw up his arm, shielded his head, and carried a scar throughout life, and certainly did not help Anglo-American relations when he was president. Now, his brother Robert, 14, was the same order was given to him. He made the same response, but he wasn't as agile as his little brother. He was clipped in the head by the cavalry saber, received a serious wound, and died several weeks later, probably of gangrene, a very painful death. So Tarleton, had he been true to history, would probably have used his cavalry saber. He wouldn't have wasted ammunition on shooting a boy in the back, nor in the killing of prisoners, as was shown in the movie, would they have been shot. They wouldn't have wasted ammunition. They would have bayoneted them or used cavalry sabers. Now, you can imagine what kind of rating that would have gotten had the true history been used. So, when asked about the movie, my response to the first question that I got if this is the only thing your students had seen, I would use it as a teaching tool because you can use it for what was in there and what's not in there. It gives you that opportunity. But the general feeling, and there's a wonderful old Victorian word, the verisimilitude, the feeling of the movie is fine. But as always with Hollywood and media presentation, the devil's in the details.